here, so you can move the chair.
Well, we leave the European leg of the season behind. Air temperature just under 30 degrees and we will be getting the second free practice session underway in just a few moments time, and alongside myself in the comment box is indeed Karun Chandok and Bernie Collins. And well, it was quite a frenetic red flag session in FP1, wasn't it, Karun? We had several in there, and Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari in the wall. Not the way he would want to start his weekend in Baku.
No, absolutely not. You know, especially coming off the back of 3 consecutive pole positions here, the win in Monza, and in a car that we think is going to be super competitive around here. So, yeah, not the way he would have wanted to start the weekend, but the fact that Carlos Sainz was in the top 5, and it really, FP1 here, the track is so dusty and unrepresentative. I don't think it's a massive loss for Charles.
No, well, the team certainly are working hard in the little gap we've had between FP1 and FP2. The same goes for the Williams team. Franco Colapinto found the wall. They are confident that they will get out again in time after he came a cropper into the wall at turn 4. Bernie, you mentioned earlier that this is probably one of the most representative sessions we'll get, especially compared to FP1. Why is that?
I think it's because the track temperatures, like you say, in P1 were very, very hot. Now we're at the same time of day that we are for the competitive sessions, the qualifying and the race largely. So lots and lots of things change in these cars as we begin to go into these dusk sessions. The sun's a lot lower in the sky, so that'll change simple things like the visor colouring that they're using. The shadowing on the track will now match what we're going to have later on in those sessions as well. The overall track temperature, it will have improved. Even though we had all those red flags this morning, the track will have improved significantly because lots of series run in between the 2 sessions as well. So this is the one that is most closely going to match what they get in that qualifying session. Not all the way there because the track will continue to improve over the weekend, but a good step in the right direction.
Well, we'll see exactly what that direction is as the cars fire up and get ready to go out into the pit lane and onto the track, and keeping cool in the shade, Ted Kravitz, good afternoon.
Hello, Harry. Hello, Karun. Hello, Bernie. Hello, everybody. Well, yes, welcome to the shady pit lane as the Red Bull Racing RB20 of Max Verstappen comes out straight out on the soft tyres. And I can tell you he's soon to be joined by Charles Leclerc because his Ferrari is finished. Not only is it finished, it's ready to go. Tyres are on, tyre blankets are on, and it's ready to fire up. So great work by the Ferrari mechanics. Yes, it was the lesser amount of damage to be repaired than the Williams of Franco Colapinto, but nevertheless they have done a good job, and Leclerc is ready to go and to make amends for that little mistake that had a big consequence in free practice 1. I've got to tell you, Harry, I've just eyeballed the Williams of Colapinto. I would estimate that's minimum another 15 minutes worth of work going on to that car. It's nowhere near finished. If they're good, they'll get it out in about 10 minutes. But I would say minimum 10-15 minutes before that car gets going.
All right, thanks, Ted. Actually, one more, Ted, for you before we head off onto the track. Any more news on Esteban Ocon's Alpine after, I think it was a PU issue at FP1?
It was a change of the motor generator unit H, the one that runs off the turbo. Funnily enough, he's ready to go, but his teammate has now got some problem, which is keeping Gasly in the garage. So Ocon is in his car and ready to go if he's not gone out behind me already. But I'm just investigating what means that why it is that Ocon's car is being worked on in the garage. So I'll get back to you on that.
All right, thank you very much, Ted. We'll come back to you shortly. Cars out on track then, the hour gets underway, Karun.
Yeah, really tricky times for Alpine at the moment. You know, there's so much going on their power unit side, isn't it? We saw protests in Monza and in Paris, we believe, as well. So there's a lot of conversations around, will they switch to Mercedes power for next year? Frankly, they've had so many issues in recent times. And you remember back in Canada, they had an issue in Ocon's car, trying to sort that out on the grid. We go to the the issues in Monza last time, where they were just clipping all the way down the straight. They were struggling with sorry, I should explain clipping. We ran out of the electrical power, and that's why they qualified okay, and then sort of just went backwards in the race. And as Bernie and I were talking about, if you got clipping issues in Monza, around here, you're a sitting duck. You will have absolutely no chance in the straight. So, yeah, I think there's some concern there in the Alpine camp on that.
Yeah, I think this circuit, just because of the circuit length, is one of the obstacles to trying to make use of all of the power that the engine has. And teams try and balance how much energy they use around the lap. And sometimes you'll do that optimally, so what's the best for overall lap time? But sometimes you'll do that a bit more strategically. So what's the best to prevent overtaking? And we can all imagine here that if you used all of your power out of turn 16 down to the start-finish straight, that would help you protect from any DRS or overtakes from others, but it might not be the fastest and optimal lap time. So a lot of the teams play with how that energy is managed around the lap, and this is one of the sessions that's good for getting on top of that as well.
Is everything okay on data?
For now, we don't see anything strange.
Check from left to right. Single feels heavy on one side compared to the other. Light on the right corners, heavy on the left corners.
Weirdly, that's the same thing Lando Norris was complaining about in FP1. So, yeah, it's just, again, to do with the steering rack and just getting that set up and calibrated. We'll see. But Leclerc is not boxed, so it's clearly not enough of a concern for him to go back into the pit. So he's going to begin this first run of FP2 on the medium tyre, Harry.
Just one more on Alpine and Oliver Oakes as well, in particular, coming in as team principal. How much of a stabiliser is that for them? He's a young team principal coming up through Formula 2. That is seems like a good sign for Alpine going forward. Yeah, listen, I've known Ollie a long time. He's a very practical and pragmatic person. I think he is prepared and is willing and has already begun asking the questions of, why are you doing that? And if somebody goes, well, that's how we've always done it, it's like, well, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's right. Maybe we should think about it a different way. And I think he's come at it with fresh eyes. He's what's also good is he's very no-nonsense, which is why, to be honest, I get on with him, because that's basically me. No-nonsense Chandon. Yeah. It's just, you've got to get straight to the point. And in F1, you haven't got time to faff around, And I think there's a couple of things. One is, you have so many layers in a modern Formula 1 team. You've got lots of different layers of management and reporting through the factory. But you've got to make sure that there's a degree of honesty going through that entire chain of command. We've got to make sure that at every level, there's no finger pointing, there's no Teflon sort of passing the buck onto another department for any deficiencies. And someone like Ollie, who's got a good practical head and is able to ask those big, wider questions. Yes, I know he's not run a Formula 1 team before, but he's on a race team, and he does understand motor racing. He can ask those questions of, well, hang on, you said that, but that doesn't quite add up with what that other person said. And I think that's what that team needs, is just some fresh blood, some fresh energy. And obviously he's got Flavio in the background guiding him. Yeah, well, and certainly guiding him, but it's amazing what a fresh set of eyes and some new blood could do to revitalise the team going forward. A decent first lap for Charles Leclerc, bedding back in after his FP1 crash to go fastest with 141.
This windshield's taken away of my vision. I need to come in. It's super distracting. And Lucio, if we just keep temping it, they'll get that windshield removed.
So just to come in on that there, how you can see on that onboard image that we have there of Lewis, the little clear screen just around the front up to the halo. So teams play with that windscreen on the car. It affects the buffering that the driver gets on the helmet, so how much air is directly hitting their helmet, and as well it has an influence on the downforce of the car and the flow all around the car, like any other component has. We often see Mercedes run a jagged edge one there, which gives some of the effect but not all of the effect of having a full windscreen. So Lewis still unhappy with that change they've obviously made in between the two sessions.
Yeah, so we'll expect to see Hamilton back in as Verstappen goes fastest of anybody in the middle sector. It was a nice view on board though with Lewis Hamilton a few moments ago, and don't forget you can watch every session this season from on board any of the 20 drivers and listen in on their team radio. To get started, all you need to do is download the Sky Sports app to your phone or tablet device, log in with your Sky ID and head to the Sky Sports F1 channel to choose your driver. Sky Glass, Sky Q and Sky Stream customers, you can also access this experience via the interactive button on your remote control. Right on board with Sergio Perez, Lando Norris as well if you like. Right now though, Perez is pushing through the scene of the crime for Charles Leclerc earlier in FP1. Perez makes it through unscathed and now embarks out of turn 16 onto the throttle on the medium tyre. And this is really what they are calling that 2.2 kilometre main straight. As soon as you're full throttle off the back of 16 all the way down the main straight. And we can just hear that sound on the bottom.
Let me check the data, but I think the car is bent somewhere.
As Perez goes to the top, Leclerc though actually still not happy in that Ferrari.
Do you think, Bernie, it could be when they've obviously had to rebuild that front corner and redo, presumably the steering rack had taken a whack as well when he crashed in the barrier? Something's not quite right with the installation there.
Yeah, there's lots of things that can go wrong, you know, when you hit a corner like that. All the suspension, I'm sure, has been changed, the steering rack, like you say, but the question mark often for teams, and we go through a lot of data to try and figure out how to dig too deep into the chassis, but there's a lot of internal suspension that links across side of the cars. How much of that is damaged? Obviously, on the cars, just for weight, we can't have sensors on absolutely everything. So some of the load across the car, some of the force that's gone across the car is implied or estimated from other sensors on the car. And it is about risk versus reward. It's getting that car out, as we know, is very, very important. Changing absolutely everything isn't possible in the time allowed, especially when you look ahead to future sessions. So they've obviously tried to do the best. It could be something very simple as a shim in the wrong place. What I mean by that is the suspension.
Any updates, please?
Yes, we're happy to continue. We are still waiting for feedback on what we see.
Well, Charles Leclerc then is wanting answers, but Ferrari seem to be, well, not finding too much of an issue on the data at least. Ted, what news can you bring us?
I'll keep it across whether Charles Leclerc does come in and fix whatever problems he's got in that car. Doesn't sound like it's giving him any confidence. Bad news for George Russell, I've got to tell you quickly, and they've got to change the engine. Forgive me if you've already said this, Harry, but he's stuck in the garage. I just thought they were just finishing up, but it's a precautionary engine change that are just finishing after free practice 1. They do oil samples of the engine oil, and they found some particles in there. Which were Team Radio?
Yeah, guys, I'm not driving with this car anymore. I'm pitching.
Did he describe it as bent? Something's bent on the car?
I think he said for the steering.
The steering's bent?
He's referring to there. And he's just said on the radio, I'm not driving this car.
Okay, so he's coming in. The mechanics of Ferrari ready to receive him. But Russell's going to be out of this session for, Mercedes estimate, the next 25 minutes or so, maybe even longer, half an hour.
It's impossible. You cannot see that on data. Impossible. It's completely... It's not straight.
Well, that escalated quickly.
Copy box.
It did quite escalate quickly, didn't it? From guys, can you see something on the data? To I think there might be something wrong. To it's impossible you can't see something on the data. Anyway, he's back in the garage, and Russell is in the garage as well. So both missing valuable track time.
It's a very fast track to have steering issues, and I can imagine in the cockpit that's not a nice feeling. You see here, Leclerc, no, that's Sainz. Oh, just skimming the barrier. He'll get away with that because that's the Tech Pro. We'll just sort of bounce off that. This is Leclerc at 15 where he had the shunt earlier, and just goes up the escape road.
We did get a momentary yellow flag, which would have been for Leclerc going off there.
That's quite a narrow place to do a U-turn, you know. I was looking at it earlier when we went down on the scooters, thinking actually it is pretty tricky to turn around there.
In every engineering debrief or engineering briefing this week, we will have made sure that the driver remembers how to use reverse, because this, Monaco, Singapore, those are the circuits we need to come in with it.
Do you also remind them to look in the mirrors? Remember when Daniel reversed into, was it Kvyat?
Yeah.
There's a good bit of the looking in the mirrors. It's ultimately their responsibility. There's so, you know, the GPS around here is pretty good for a street circuit, so there's lots of information we can tell the drivers based on the GPS, based on what we can see on the pit wall. But we often can't see totally what our driver's up to. You know, sometimes the onboard's not as good as we would like it to be on the pit wall, or it's a very, very small bit of your screen. But it is often very difficult to get them back out. Especially this track becomes quite busy. We can see at the minute it's busy through one half of the track and the other half's free, so you're often waiting for a slot to get out.
Well, yeah, it is busy and it is narrow, particularly in that middle sector up through the castle section between 8, 9, 10 and 11. And I believe we can head down to turn 8, which is where we can find 1997 Formula 1 world champion Jacques Villeneuve. Good afternoon, Jacques. What can you tell us?
Good afternoon to you. I'm so blessed and lucky, because if there's one corner to be so close as this one, it's so tricky. And you can really tell the difference from car to car, driver to driver, which one has confidence. You need a car that pivots here because it's a pointy corner. There's a little hump just past the apex, and some cars bounce, and you can hear the engine rev up just when they hit it. Some others just drive as if it wasn't there. And the ones who bounce a little bit, the rear snaps and get close to the exit wall. But you can tell which driver knows his car, which one has confidence, arrives with a lot of speed, just gives it a little bit of steering angle, and the car pivots. And that's the one. These are the ones that are very, very fast. When you look at Verstappen going through here, he almost kisses the inside wall, outside wall. He knows exactly that the car will turn. If you don't have that confidence in the corner, you lose 2 or 3 tenths, and you'll never be able to get some speed. It's amazing. Then it goes up, and visually you can tell that it is so difficult for the drivers because it's all blind. They go over the hump, they don't see where the next corner is, and it's all a question of rhythm. You miss this first one here, you'll miss the whole Old Town part. And frankly, sometimes you see high-speed corners and you see how impressive it is. Here, you really see which driver is talented and knows exactly where his car is going to be. I wouldn't want to have a bad setup in this corner.
At all. Thank Jacques so much for that. Of course, that was the scene a few years ago where Charles Leclerc, of course, and the I am stupid radio message straight into the wall. Charles Leclerc is back into the pits now. His teammate out there going fastest of anybody in the middle sector. Perez is going quickly, or has set the fastest that time on the medium with a 1:44.5 as we have a yellow flag in sector 1 and 2. Verstappen through turns 5 and 6, going slowly.
Yeah, I think he's just gone a bit deep at turn 5. We could see in the race control on the onboard, he's gone a bit deep at 5, and he's managed to get himself out of it. So I think he's got away with him. Sure, we get a replay. There he is. The front wing looks intact, so I think he's got away without making any contact with the barrier. But Carlos Sainz has gone to the top of the times, Harry.
He certainly has. Talking about that. Sainz then, crucially, not putting the car on board FP1. At least able to give Ferrari valuable data. Hamilton third at the moment, but he's gone out on the hard tyre early doors as Albon slots into the top 5. Here we go then. Let's see what happened to Max Verstappen. Tries to turn it in, locks up, and actually quite lucky not to hit the wall. Didn't decide to take the to the escape off just to the right-hand side.
I think it's just that he decided too late, Harry. It sort of committed a little bit. He realised he wasn't going to make it, but he couldn't make it to the escape road and managed to get that stop. But a bit of a lock up there on the front left. So interesting to see if that medium tyre comes back out again, or if that's the end of the run for him. He was purple, I think, sector 1 just before that happened.
Well, promising start for FP1 then, certainly for Red Bull, and they'll hope to continue that. But Bernie, in FP2, what is the running plan for most of the teams? What will they be going through from the whole hour?
Yeah, so it's pretty consistent across the majority of the tracks, and I'll come into the exceptions in a moment. But what you're trying to do is you run a medium or a hard tyre for the first run at a medium level of fuel. Do you want to come in on that?
I think we just got a yellow flag for Joe Guan Yu. I think he's also gone into the runoff area at turn 3. There he is, managing to do a, some point turn and get back out again for the Chinese driver. On on his way, and doesn't look like there's no harm done to that one. So back onto the road for Joe Guanyi.
Yeah, so you do the first run around 30-40 kg of fuel on a medium or hard tyre. Then you'll do the closest you'll get to your qualifying practice today, another 30 kg roughly soft tyre run. That's the one opportunity the drivers have. You might get a push-cool push in here, something like that. And then you start to get into your high fuel run-in. So the teams will add fuel up to the 80-90 kg mark and begin to do their consistent non-DRS runs. In that, they want to get a feel of what is the tyre degradation, how is the tyre going to perform, what's the difference across the tyres, lots of information for the race. And as we know, points are on Sunday, so you do always try and get that long run in. Some exceptions are the track, like Monaco or Singapore, where overtaking is so difficult that qualifying becomes more important. And in those sessions,
Checo thinks we're racing.
I don't think anybody's racing at that speed.
in those sessions, teams are focused on the qualifying more than the race pace.
Okay, thank you very much, Bernie. Yeah, Hulkenberg just getting a little bit, he feels, held up there by Perez coming through that Old Town section. And we did hear that Hulkenberg actually had a bit of a DRS issue in free practice 1, which prevented him from using that. So perhaps more to come from Hulkenberg and his teammate this weekend, which will be Oliver Behrman replacing Kevin Magnussen, who serves that one race ban. And back for his second race as a Formula One driver is Franco Colapinto, who is now back out on track. And Karun, his mindset, where is that going to be now after that crash in FP1?
He's just got to reset, hasn't he? He's got to treat it as if this is the start of his weekend. Just dial himself in, slowly build the confidence back up, and then make sure he's in a decent position for the long runs. You know, I don't think today is about the qualifying runs for him. He's out of sync now. He's going to have to do that tomorrow. Yes, I know it's going to be hotter for FP3 and less representative, but if I was him, this would be a session, if I was a team, just focus on building his confidence back up. Just give him the laps, put the fuel in it. Yes, let him have a soft tyre run, but for him, it's not about looking for the last 10th. It's just about get through the laps, get through the session, and get the learning in the bank.
And it's a tough race to come into, to have your second Grand Prix. Monza, a decent showing for Franco Colapinto, finished 12th on the road in the end. But at the moment, he's out there down in 16th. It's Carlos Sainz with just over 40 minutes remaining, still fastest. Yeah, Gasly still pushing then, a bit further down the order in 19th. And, well, we heard from Ted earlier, he had a bit of a delayed start to this session, did Gasly. It was his teammate, Esteban Ocon, who had a power unit issue in FP1, which prevented him from running. So the Alpine team possibly on the back foot slightly coming into this session, but on the medium tyre. Let's see what he's got to the line. No help of a toe from anybody in front of him. Finds a little bit of time, though, and moves himself up into 16th fastest with his future teammate for next year, Jack Doohan, watching on. And I'm really excited about next year for the driver lineups that we're going to get. Seeing this fresh blood coming in, Doohan, Behrman, Antonelli. We still could see the likes of possibly a Gabriel Bortoletto in alongside Hulkenberg down at Sauber. This feels like a moment where those years where we saw, you know, Leclerc, Russell, Albon all come in and graduate from F2. It feels like it's that moment again happening in terms of that young generation.
And it's great. You know, I felt a bit disappointed this year that there was no movement in the market. I felt people like Theo Porcher not getting an opportunity and Felipe Drugovich not getting an opportunity. You know, as F2 champions, you start to question them, what is the point of F2? And frankly, even now, if you look at it, you know, the three names you mentioned, including Colapinto, they're nowhere near the top of the championship in F2. So I think as a sport, we've got to be careful not to make the pyramid irrelevant. You know, it's got to be a good judge of which are the good drivers coming through the ladder. But yeah, on the whole, I'm really happy to see good, fresh blood coming into the paddock.
I think the teams, like, you obviously can look at F2 Championship and say the drivers that were taken on aren't at the top of that championship, but the teams do a lot of in-depth analysis, teammate against teammate. They try and correct for the cars where they can. Obviously, we don't know all of the information on that. But, and as we know, a lot of the teams that have junior drivers coming through, that they can gauge their own data directly and have access to their feedback and all of these things. So I think it is important that drivers have seat time, that have experience. And one of the things that I thought some drivers potentially lacked was good knowledge of the rules or the regulations, and all of that intelligence that you build in those sorts of series is so important to having a very intelligent driver when they get to F1 that you can really build and work with and do your engineering meetings with.
Right, it's a really good point, actually. I mean, I'm just having a look at the F2 standings now. Isaac Hadjar is currently the championship leader. Of course, he's a Red Bull junior, but Red Bull have their own problems with their driver lineup right now. Where's the space for Hadjar when you've still got a Liam Lawson waiting in the wings on the sidelines as Yuki Tsunoda, who's seemingly being overlooked for a potential Red Bull seat, starts a lap in the RB. Bortoletto, a McLaren junior. Zane Maloney, a Sauber junior, but not being talked about for that other seat either. So we'll just wait and see how that one pans out. But just 38 minutes or so remaining of this FP2 session. Yuki Tsunoda currently out there, but it is a majority of the field in the pits for the time being. Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez, the fastest cars out on track before that session. Tsunoda out on track then, making his way through turns 5 and 6. Bit of traffic to his right. That's Franco Colapinto back on board, but it's what it was, but pretty quiet out on track. But it was not very quiet in the cockpit of the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc at the start of the session. Not happy, it seems, with that rebuilt Ferrari. Ted, do we know any more?
Yes, we do, Harry. Let me bring you down to the Ferrari garage and talk about bend it like Beckham. We've got our own little wall here of Ferrari mechanics stopping a free kick coming in. Can you see this scene down here?
Yeah,
we got the human wall, as if I think they're facing the wrong way if I'm taking the free kick, although with my free kicks they might as well be looking the wrong way. It's not going to go in, whatever. But what they're doing with the Ferrari human wall is that they're trying to unbend what Charles Leclerc thinks is a bent steering rack. I'm sure it isn't a bent steering rack, but there is something wrong with it, and that's what they're doing. They don't want to let anybody else see, or any other teams see, the intricacies of their front bulkhead here at Ferrari. So that's why we've got the mechanics providing the human shield. So they are trying to fix the steering rack and what's wrong with the front suspension of this car. And I've got to tell you, they're not much closer to getting the job done. So it looks like Leclerc, the job that had been fixed wasn't fixed properly, and so he's missing even more track time. I'll let you know when we have some kind of resolution. Just to let you know, Harry, there aren't actually any other teams having a look at the secrets of their front car, so they're only stopping
they're stopping you.
Us, yes. Seeing as I wouldn't know one steering rack from another, I don't think they have to worry on that front.
But all the teams are watching you, Ted, hoping that you'll give them the information and the lovely visual on their screen.
Well, if JD does want to get really cheeky, we can actually find a spot between the knees and the legs to show the intricacies. But we're not going to do that because we're respectful of Ferrari, Bernie.
So we've just got the first of the quali runs starting to unfold, I think, now. We can see lots of drivers on the soft tyre. We're on board here with Lando Norris into turn 3. If you look at the dashboard, the top right button, that's his delta time. That gives him his lap time in comparison with his previous best. And obviously that would have been on the medium tyre. So you would expect he's already, as we could see, over half a second up on his previous best. We'll see now as the lap unfolds. Lewis Hamilton gets nicely out of the way into turn 8, and this is where the track gets narrow to the left-hander of, sorry, it's the left-hander's 8, that was turn 7, and now the sun's in your eye as you try and turn sharply right and then left through the old part of the circuit, climbing steeply uphill, and we get the second sector time as we come through a bit of traffic. That's in an ugly place. Okay, gets out of the way, that's good. Good driving there by Yuki Tsunoda. So Norris gets a clean run through 15, and he should pick up a nice tow from the Alpine of Pierre Gasly. So he loses a bit of downforce through that left-hander of 16, but it's worth taking the pain because the benefit he's going to get, oh, that is...
Oh, that was tight.
No, that's honestly, if Gasly was going to bail out of it, he should have bailed out of it before the Kinks. I think that's a bit naughty.
I think the difficulty is, and someone can correct me if I say something wrong, Gasly's not started a lap. So Gasly was setting up to start the lap, So Gasly should have let him through before turn 16, but Norris was sort of hoping he would turn down the straight, but because Norris is on a flying lap, he was so much quicker than Gasly there.
Yeah, but my point is then Gasly, as you said, should have got out of the way earlier. Getting out of the way in that kink makes no sense. It's ruined his next lap and Lando's current lap. I think that's a bit ugly there in terms of position, but there you go. Anyway, Verstappen's gone fastest, Harry, on the first sector.
He has fastest of anybody. Albon moves up to fourth, and the Williams side has had a nice clean run compared to Norris across the line. He's fastest at the moment, improves his time on the soft tyre, 1:43.9, puts 4/10 between himself and Perez, who's still in the pits, who set that on the media. But here comes Verstappen then, out of 16, and then begins the climb to the finish line. Fastest of anybody in the middle sector as well.
He's got absolutely nobody in front of him for the slipstream, so this is going to be pure straight line speed off the Red Bull. As we see him come, you can see the dust still coming up as the plank, the bottom of the car, touches the ground. He'll come up to the timing line. George Russell has finally left the pits, and Sainz stays at the top of the time. So Verstappen's last sector only a 25.6. Behrman's gone fourth faster. That's a good effort for him, his first run on the softs in this session. Lewis Hamilton, Harry, through 15, dropping downhill. What's his first sector? 36.9, 3/10 down. Middle sector, 4/10 down on Verstappen, but not bad compared to Sainz.
Hamilton then making his way through the left-hand kink, then the right-hand kink. The man who was, well, put it on pole here back in 2017, won it in 2018 to the line. Will not get the help of a tow, but will get that DRS getting up to over 335, just about, kilometres an hour to the line. And third fastest then for Hamilton. Lost a bit of time in that final sector, 2/10 adrift of Carlos Sainz. We wait to see what Perez does on the medium when he's out there. Alonso climbs up into 7th, and that actually is a handy lap from Ben. If you compare him to Tsunoda and Albon, which you'd say is where Haas is fighting, ahead of them both. I know it's only early stages, but I'm sure that'll give him a bit of confidence. Here we go then, another look at this Gasly-Norris incident.
Yeah, so he's gone through the kink, and then I think Gasly probably thought, I've moved over to the left, because he has moved away from the line, and thought, I'm going to leave Lando some space. But if put yourself in Lando's cockpit, that is not a comfortable place, right? Because he doesn't know.
I have a problem. I have a problem with the battery, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. That explains it a bit more. But is he carry on?
But then he doesn't come into...
Well, maybe he just carries on to recharge.
There could be lots of things there, you know, from the team's point of view. If he's setting up to start a lap, then they're not expecting to tell him the traffic information about Norris starting so close behind him. And if the battery's not in the right mode or the right switch position, and he doesn't have the deployment at the point, then he ends up being slower and having to board starting the lap. But let's see, we'll have to pick through the data later.
Piastri's gone second fastest, just 33 thousandths behind. I don't know if he got a tow. His final sector was very competitive compared to Max and Lewis.
We'll just add that Behrman did definitely get a tow, because Behrman did his lap shortly behind Verstappen, so he was towed down the start-finish straight.
So that'll be part of the strategy of qualifying, right? It's trying to place yourself to get that tow, but also then not be hindered by anybody else at the same time.
Qualifying here, it's really what you optimally want. You want no one in front of you from turn 1.
I just struggle a lot with visibility, man. With this sun.
You really struggle a lot from turn 1 to turn 16. You don't want anyone ahead of you there. But then from 16 onwards, a bit what happened with Norris and Gasly, but obviously you want it to go your way. You want someone who's out of phase with you, finishing a lap as you're starting a lap, that type of thing, to get that end of the lap tow is so important, but then you don't want them ahead of you the whole way around the lap.
So when you're sat on the pit wall trying to figure that out, are you just constantly looking at the driver tracker?
It's so difficult, you know. Sometimes it'll fall in your favour, particularly in the early stages of qualifying where there's slightly different run plans happening, but towards the end of qualifying, when most people go out with just time for one lap, it's almost impossible to get that to happen, and you need to prioritise having the gap to the car ahead through that first and second sector.
I think Piastri did get a distant tow. Just looking at the onboard, I can't quite see who it is, but his speed trap figures were 4-5k quicker than both Verstappen and Hamilton, so that somewhat explains the final sector there.
Okay, well, it was still enough to put him up into second, and that will be half the battle, as Bernie's explaining in qualifying, is finding that spot on the track to give yourself that toe, but then also not get hindered yourself by it. So that'll be something to watch out for tomorrow in qualifying. Ted, what news?
Well, if you look out your commentary box, you'll see that I'm outside the Red Bull garage. So I was having a look at what they just showed on the TV there about Max's alternative. What can we do about the sun visor strip? And there is that. It looks like they had that helmet. Well, they do have that helmet ready to go. In fact, they've got 2 spare helmets for Max Verstappen ready to go. And maybe the drivers up there. Well, Karun, you can tell us about having a wide visor strip. I mean,
we were
obviously,
talking about it this morning, Ted, weren't we?
Sure, but I mean, obviously, I love Max Verstappen when he says, you know, I can't believe what's going on with the sun. Well, he's not complaining about the sun, obviously. There's not much you can do about the sun. But when you have this low sun, and we've had this very many times here, although maybe the time of the year that we're here has changed it slightly. I'm not an astrophysicist, Bernie. Is the sun in a different position? Is it lower in the sky in September as it would be in April? Oh, that's maybe.
Have a look. Have a look tonight.
I love how that if there's anything science, weather, satellite,
I am also not
solar
a
system
physicist.
related.
When did you get the physicist degree?
Yeah, we just heard to Bernie.
Ask Bernie. Just ask Bernie. She's clearly.
Anything about a moon landing, we're going to come to next.
She's clearly the most intelligent of all of us, Karun. So yeah, that
obviously.
is why I default to Bernie on these
Thank
things.
you very much, Ted.
But in this way, I'm interested in how Max, you know, sorts himself out with the low sun. The problem he's obviously having with visibility.
Well, actually, you could do it with the visor stickers. I mean, I was thinking, Ted and I were chatting this morning about Nigel Mansell used to have this enormous visor strip because he wouldn't use a dark visor. He'd use these massive, big visor strips and to block out the low sun. So if you actually Google a picture of Mansell's helmet from 91, 92, whatever, you'll see it. But actually, it is a real problem here because you've got it in your eye, particularly in the right-hander of turn 10. That's where it's really sharp in your eye, but also a little bit into 15, possibly into 16 as well, depending on the building. So, yeah, it is an issue. And you have it places like Suzuka. Le Mans is the worst one, to be honest. It's absolutely horrendous with the low sun in your eye.
Well, the low sun not impacting Verstappen's teammate, it seems, Sergio Perez, who we know is handy around this circuit. Statistically, the most successful man around this circuit. Now, almost half a second clear at the top with a nice tidy lap from the Mexican. And I suppose when he was re-signed, or, well, told... Well, he was signed, then he was up for grabs, and then he was re-signed again, at least for the next few races. Part of that was that we're heading to some Sergio Perez strong tracks, this being one of them, as his teammate, Verstappen, still pushing, has to find the runoff. Nice UE, very, very well collected there from Verstappen, who rejoins. So this is good momentum for Perez, who is still fighting for that seat. I think, had the Red Bull problems as a whole of the car actually kind of distracted everybody a bit now from Perez's struggles?
Yeah, maybe. You know, I think they've got bigger problems. So you're right, yeah. I think internally they have got bigger problems to solve. But this weekend has come at exactly the right time for him, isn't it? A big confidence boost would be exactly what he needs at this point here. We've got a yellow flag in sector 2. Leclerc, we've got Charles Leclerc, turn 8, I think, in the runoff area. Yeah, there he is. Okay, so he hasn't hit the barrier, and he's managed to bail out of it. Colapinto's done a good job, Harry. Well, he's done a time within 100th of Alex Albon, so that is a good effort after the start of the weekend he's had.
He has, and and Charles Leclerc will breathe a sigh of relief. Back out on track now in a hopefully, unbent car. And just balking, was that Hamilton behind him coming through as well.
But that's very interesting for Leclerc there. That's him on the runoff on an out lap, if I'm not mistaken. So that's not him on a pushing lap. That's him on an out lap, I think.
Well, let's have a look. Lock up. Oh no, this is a different part of the circuit. So this is this is Sainz, not Leclerc.
Sainz at turn 3.
So we haven't seen the build-up to Leclerc's off then through the castle section, but his teammate also pushing and then finding a little bit of a wider exit route for Carlos Sainz.
So I feel like we've seen pretty much everyone, apart from Leclerc and Russell, show their hand on the soft tyres, isn't it? Everyone else has done a lap, and you'd have to say both Colapinto and Ollie Behrman doing a fantastic job in this session. Both of them within hundreds of their teammates and, you know, just one place behind the sister car. So they can both be very happy with the job they've done on the soft tyres.
Do you think, though, for those two in particular, the pressure is slightly off and away for different reasons? For Ollie Behrman, he knows he's got a seat for next year at Haas. For Franco Colapinto, he knows he hasn't got a seat at Williams next year. But for somebody like Colapinto, okay, discretion in FP1, a crash, that's not what he needed. But if he is able to get over that, carry the momentum through, stay close to Albon, put in solid performances, there is still one seat available next year. Does that put him in the frame for that spot alongside Nico Hülkenberg in the Sauber?
Listen, there are only 20 seats on the grid, and if you're one of the incumbents, you're automatically auditioning for one next year. So absolutely, you know, if I was his management, then I'd be banging on the door of Sauber and saying, look, I'm here, I'm getting experience, I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to be banking all this knowledge from a Williams with a Mercedes power unit, and maybe I can bring that information to Audi. So, yeah, I'd be trying every trick in the book to get a seat at that Sauber seat next year.
It could be a little bit tough at first, but what that project could turn into might be something that everybody wants to get involved with. Speak of Colapinto, though, and I think that was a touch with the wall. Ooh, and it was, well, a bit more than a touch, and taking a bit of the advertising with him as well. But it's a bit of tech pro there, so it does sort of allow you to bounce off of it slightly. And Charles Leclerc, as well, as he's embarking on that lap, just managed to keep his Ferrari out of the wall ever so slightly. But we've seen some quali runs so far, and the Perez is currently fastest. Just over 20 minutes then left of this second practice session, last of the day. We'll get another go tomorrow ahead of qualifying. And, well, Max Verstappen back in the garage, and we heard him on the radio talking about the sun and complaining about his visor and the lights and his visibility, so perhaps just having an adjustment of that. But it's a funny position for somebody like Max Verstappen to be in now, having started this season and has been utterly dominant over the last couple of years, to suddenly, almost out of nowhere, be on the back foot. And with all the internals that have gone on within Red Bull at the start of the year, now I think he did a brilliant job at just being able to focus on what was happening on the track. But now it seems that the track action is not going the way of Red Bull and Verstappen. This might be a turnaround weekend, but I think it's quite a testament to Verstappen's sort of mentality as his constant drive for that top performance.
Well, I was asking some of the engineers about this yesterday. You know, what's it been like? And they were saying Verstappen, they've been really impressed. It's like, look, ignore the rants on the radio, ignore what he says in the media. Internally, he is working super hard and is super motivated to course correct and get them back to winning. He wants to win this 4th World Championship. And he isn't just putting his hands up and says, well, if I lose it, it's down to Red Bull, you know, it's nothing to do with me. No, he's working super hard with the team internally to try and solve it. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's a big test for him, but you know, he's stepping up, I think.
Well, it will be interesting to see how it goes over the next few races. George Russell with a precautionary engine change, keeping him in at the start of the session. Out there on track now, has been and is currently plumb last, but he's down on that harder tyre. And so focusing then, you would imagine, more on the long run pace at this stage, and particularly having started on that hard tyre.
Yeah, what do you think they're going to do, Bernie? Do you think we saw this? I can't remember what track it was. They put a soft on right at the end, and they completely out of sync with George. There was an FP2, maybe it was Monza, but it sort of escaped me. Would you put a soft tyre on towards the end of the session just to get some info?
Yeah, I think the reason that teams do that is they want to alternate which tyre starts on the grid. So if you have one driver on a soft and one driver on a hard, then you get the cross-car compare on the launch off the grid at the end of the session.
No, but I mean, would you send him to do a qualifying simulation you see what I mean? Like towards the end of the session, other people will be on the high fuel runs.
No, I wouldn't here, because the traffic here is so important. I don't think you get a good read in qualifying. It's very soft. It'll be interesting to see what Leclerc does.
Well, George Russell then to the line, a little bit out of sync. Hamilton just gone faster, actually, up into second, last lap around on the soft tyre. So it's Perez from Hamilton as Russell comes across the line, stays plumb last with that lap of a 1:48.0. Joe and Ocon joining in further back in the pack, but just under 20 minutes then left to go of free practice 2. Just under 20 minutes then left of free practice 2 running, and Ollie Bearman out there in the house at the moment, attempting to become the first driver in F1 history to score points for 2 different constructors in his first 2 races. Now there's a mouthful of a stat for you. I mean, it was phenomenal what he did in the Ferrari in Saudi Arabia, wasn't it? I mean, this must be luxury for him now to have had, you know, a week or 2 knowing that he would get the drive, knowing there'd be FP1 and FP2 to contend with. And so far, Bearman's displaying really nice, solid driving.
Yeah, he's had the chance to dial himself. I mean, in Saudi, he got the phone call at 1:30 p.m. on Saturday. You know, there's really no warning, and he did a great job. So, yeah, I think, as you say, this will feel a proper luxury for him.
And he said, you know, in his press earlier this week, he's been building up to this. He's been preparing for that seat next year. So he'll have been doing work in the sim. He'll have been listening to their debriefs. He'll be trying to get integrated into the team a little bit where he can. So it won't be such a shock to the system for him this week as it was definitely in that Jeddah weekend.
I did speak to him. I asked him a question in the press conference earlier this week. Obviously, how long have you been building up for this for? Has it only been those 2 weeks, or did you have a bit of an inkling either way? Because Magnussen was on 10 penalty points, the likelihood was probably quite high. Naturally, he said, well, I've been preparing anyway for next year. But what was important was that he said, I wouldn't have picked another Formula 2 weekend to miss out on. And that kind of comes back to what we was talking about earlier, and how, you know, F2 needs to still remain that barometer for the talent to get up to that next level.
And I tell you what, for Ollie Bearman, yeah, I mean, this is the one, probably going to be the one-off cameo for this year, although we don't know. I mean, we didn't expect him to be Saudi.
A clean slate, doesn't
but that's the thing. Magnus' clean slate, 7 races to go. He doesn't have a seat for next year. Can't wait to see what K-Mag is going to be up to.
Oh, it's going to be a good one. We're looking forward to having K-Mag back, but Bearman doing a super job so far, Ted.
He is, Harry, yes, just to fill you in on that. I did ask the question to the Haas boss, Ao Komatsu, in the break as to whether they considered saying to K-Mag, look, thanks very much, but, you know, would you mind if we, obviously he would mind, but, you know, were they minded to put Bearman in to the Haas seat of K-Mags for the rest of the season so that you could give him an extra good special, extra start for next year? And Komatsu said, no, not at all. I mean, obviously, first there's the matter of a contract. Komatsu didn't say that. That's me saying that. But he said, look, the way that Magnussen drove in Monza, the way he made up for that 10-second penalty, pulled out 10 seconds just through sheer determination alone, meant that really K-Mag is on it at the moment. He's in tune with this car, and we think he can score points for the rest of the season. But of course, Komatsu did add that Bearman so far is doing an absolutely flawless job, which is evidenced by what we've been seeing so far.
Well, absolutely. And talk of the devil, Ao Komatsu, the team principal of Haas, is with us across the weekend and listening in on the pit wall. I don't know how much of that you heard for us, but Ted, they're saying, was there a possibility that Ollie might have taken over for the rest of the season, or was that never on the cards?
Hello, sorry, is that for me?
Yeah.
Sorry. sorry. I didn't hear the beginning of it. No. So all these are just standing for Baku. Kevin's going to be back in the car for Singapore.
But what we're trying to work out here, Io, is obviously you've got Ollie in the lineup for next year alongside Esteban Ocon. So surely there's got to be a conversation around, do you come up with a settlement and, you know, thanks Kev, here's your golden handshake, go off and sail the Atlantic on your boat, and we're going to prepare Ollie for next season.
Are you offering to be a lawyer, Karan?
I mean, I'll have the conversation. I'm not saying I'll be successful, but I'll have a go.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I didn't realize you started your new service. So yeah, now I know. I'll call you next week.
No, but in all seriousness, would you consider having Ollie for the rest of the season? Because it's good preparation for next year, right?
At the moment, all I can say is our baseline plan is put Kevin back straight away in Singapore. But of course, this weekend we'll monitor how Ollie's doing as well.
All right, thank you, Aya. But in this session for FP2, how has the running been going? Hulkenberg currently 8th, just ahead of Behrman, so they've been evenly matched so far.
No, honestly, it's impressive. It's really good. To be honest, from both drivers, really, with our car to be this high up at this stage. And then Ollie, again, carried on from FP1. He's building up to it. And then you know how quick Nico is on qualifying trim. So for Ollie to be just up there is pretty good.
You're doing an excellent job of mastering the team principal diplomatic skills of not answering anything. But, I'm going to ask you, just looking ahead, obviously your targets, RB, I guess, in the Constructors' Championship, we know every position is worth, sort of $10-12 million. So is that realistic for you guys to get RB, you think, the gap, considering, because they seem to have started the season strongly, but have dipped away a bit?
Yeah, of course we have to go for it, and I think every event we have to take it as it comes. To me, like every event is like a World Championship final, because normally it's about 1 or 2 points available for us. Then we are 6 points behind, 8 races to go. So every single race for us to be perfect, and that's what we are striving for.
It's going to be so tight, isn't it, in that midfield pack? One more and then we'll let you go, Io. Just on Nico Hulkenberg, we heard he had a DRS issue in FP1. Could you explain a bit more about that, what that was, and if you fixed it or if you're worried about it going forward?
To be honest, I haven't heard exactly what the issue was, but we changed the rear wing, so it's working now. So we still don't know exactly what the cause, but we'll get to the bottom of it tonight to make sure it doesn't happen on any other wings going forward.
Brilliant. All right, thank you so much, Komatsu, team principal of the Haas Formula 1 team, joining us on the pit wall across the weekend. Really appreciate your time and watching how Ollie Behrman gets on over the course of this weekend. Both Haas currently 8th and 9th, but Karun, to the top is Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, gone to the top of the time, so they have gone for that set of soft tyres to do a quali sim. Obviously, he's out of sync because of running much later in the session to other people. 20 minutes, that's quite a bit of track evolution with cars pounding round and round. So the track is in better shape than when Perez and Hamilton did their times. But that's a legacy of his crash in FP1. He's had to catch up on some of the learning and then had the issue with the steering rack, obviously. So yeah, what we can say, given the fact that we have 3 teams within 66 thousandths of a second, and we didn't get to see Norris complete his lap, is it's going to be super close, I think, once again, between the top 4 cars.
I think the Leclerc lap there is very impressive. And one of the things that you mentioned, Kurt, is the track improvement will go into that. The track is in a slightly better state than it was earlier for the other guys. But then to add to that, the little caveat to that is Leclerc had a lovely 3-car tow down the straight.
Carlos Sainz, again, sorry Bernie, just finding himself, he's gone off there before, it's down at turn 7, just having to find reverse gears. He had to do that a couple of times across today's session, but crucially not finding the wall, and just lets the RB of Tsunoda make his way through.
So, but Bernie, try and put a number on that maybe, in terms of, let's assume Perez did his time, I didn't know exactly, about 20 minutes ago. With the cars pounding round and round, what do you think that's worth? Maybe 3/10, 2 3/10?
Yeah, potentially something like 2/10 around here in track improvement. In that time, the track improves the most at the beginning of the session, and then it tails off towards the end of the sessions. But it is still improving lap on lap on lap, and that's what we see even going into the race. This track will be improving lap on lap every race. And I heard a really interesting quote from Alonso at one point saying, even in the race, every lap you can adjust your braking zone by a very, very small amount. And that sort of level of intelligence is so impressive to me. But yes, there will be a good degree of track improvement. Those 3 cars ahead of him down the straight, the first car's breaking the tunnel of air, the second car is a little bit more, the third car even more. So Ferrari managed his gap there on track really well. With a lot of other cars now on high fuel, it's very hard to find the space to get a lap time in that's 5 seconds quicker than what people are currently lapping, and he opened the gap just enough to make sure at the end of the lap he got that nice tow but wasn't impeded by any traffic. So well managed there from Ferrari.
They'd like to repeat that in qualifying, wouldn't they? If you could pick up...
If everyone else was on high fuel and you were 5 seconds a lot faster.
And you're laughing. And that is the name of the game around the streets of Baku for qualifying. That is going to be one to tune in for. So do join us for that tomorrow afternoon. But yeah, high fuel running, long running underway. And I just want to come back to something while we're in the last 10 or so minutes. I'll tell you what, we'll go to Ted first. Ted, what have you got?
I've got a couple of things down here. First of all, RB, we haven't spoken too much about them. Yuki Tsunoda currently 10th, I think, Ricciardo 15th. For them, so flipping where they were in free practice 1, where Ricciardo was clearly ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. They are one of the midfield teams who actually do have an upgrade here this weekend. It's a circuit-specific, trimmed-down front wing with less of a sort of aggressive camber on there to try and get them some nice straight-line speed. So yeah, some high hopes at RB, but as Ayo Komatsu was saying, they'll be fighting very keenly in that midfield space for the last remaining points, surely with Aston Martin as well. And Karun and Bernie, I have an astrophysicist. I have a message from an astrophysicist.
Oh, excellent.
To tell us that yes, indeed, the sun is lower in September than it is April. The sunset today, i.e. the time that it will be going, you know, below the horizon, obviously, is at 6:32 p.m. local. And on race day last year, the 30th of April, sunset was almost an hour and 2 minutes later at 7:34 p.m. local. So the sun is indeed lower in the sky now than it would have been in the races, Azerbaijani races' usual time of April previously.
Who's the astrophysicist,
It's Sid in Shepherd's Bush.
Well, there you go. We've name-checked. Well done.
Thank you, Sid. Yep.
Just want to point out, George Russell has gone for a qualifying run, so we saw...
Copy.
Yeah, as I was saying, I'm trying to remember which race it was, but the sort of practices are blurring into one in my head at the moment. But they did this, might have been Spa. They went for a run when everyone else was on low fuel. They went for a quali sim at Mercedes, and they've gone for it again. So Russell, apparently on the track map, he's got... what's he got? Stroll, Gasly ahead of him. They found a bit of space, as Gasly ahead of him could be a bit of traffic, but they have found him some space, I think, to try and get at least one lap on the board here.
Momentary yellow flag, just somebody going off deep, I think, at turn 2, but back onto the track, or as I say, there's another yellow flag out. There's quite a big gaggle of cars coming through turn 3. You've got Albon, Alonso, Stroll and Zhou, and I think it might have been one of the Saubers. It's actually Bottas further round. There he is, making his way exit of turn 1. But while we've only got 7 minutes left of FP2, Bernie, we're going to release you, and you can make your way back down to the paddock. We'll catch up with you a little bit later. Thank you very much for all of your insights, and we'll continue to get those throughout the course of the weekend. Bottas then back out onto the track, a man fighting for that seat. Zhou Guanyu as well, his teammate, also in the running, along with the likes of Gabriel Bortoleto, the Formula 2 driver currently fighting for that championship. Is also in Fernando Alonso's management stable as well. So Alonso pushing Bortoleto for that seat. This is Bottas trying to turn it in, and like the rear was about to step out from him, Karun, there.
Yeah, just turned in, had a bit of movement on the rear, decided to catch it and go into the runoff area instead of having spin.
Again, a lovely Yui, and he's back out onto the circuit. We've not actually touched too much on the Aston Martins, as Lance Stroll shows us a brilliant view of the car, stopping to brake down at turn 2 and getting back going again in terms of where they are on the track. Stroll is currently 7th, Alonso down in 12th. Of course, they're the talk of the town coming into this weekend, with Adrian Newey signing with them after his tenure at Red Bull comes to a close, which will be a massive boost, not only for the drivers in that team. And while the results may not be showing right now, the future prospects, everyone working in that factory, that must buoy you up so much.
It must, but it's not fixing their problems this weekend. So I think right now, they're just focused on this. You know, I think racing, when they arrive at the racetrack, they're focused on this race weekend. Yeah, there's obviously lots of noise around Adrian arriving, but that effect you're not going to see till 26. So really, it's about just trying to understand what's gone wrong from the highs of last year. You know, think of Baku last year. Alonso was there. You know, where he finished 4th, I think, last year, and the early part of last season was so impressive, and then the performance has just gone away. And we heard Mike Crack saying it's been a disappointing season by their own admission, right?
On the technical team, though, at Aston Martin, is there a danger that actually Adrian Newey coming in might ruffle a few feathers with it almost seems like they're a bit heavy with people now. You've got, you know, people like Andy Cowell coming in, Enrico Cardier from Ferrari also coming over, Bob Bell, Dan Fallows, previously worked with Adrian Newey at Red Bull. You wonder where they're
and I think they've got Eric Blando as well from
you
Mercedes.
wonder where their position then sits going forward as well.
Yeah, I wonder if they're wondering as well. So, you know, it's a fair question, right? Like, it's one thing to sign a whole load of big names and heavy hitters, but you've got to find a structure where they can all coexist. And just look at McLaren recently. You know, they had David Sanchez, but then they also got Rob Marshall, and the incumbent being Peter Prodromou. And in the end, there wasn't space for everybody, so David Sanchez and them parted, and he's ended up at Alpine. So, you know, that's not a reflection on David Sanchez's abilities or talent. It's just within the structure, it didn't quite work. So, and this is where Aston now, and I think it's a bit different in Adrian's case because he sits above them all, right? You know, at the end of the day, he's going to be a co-owner, shareholder of the team. So he's going to sit above and actually, I think, be in charge of creating the structure that's required. So he's going to look at all of these people, not just the ones you mentioned, but also various other senior management and department heads and then the people below them, and go, right, this is how I think we need to restructure, reorganize this design group.
Well, we'll see how that one pans out. There will be, I'm sure, some politics to negotiate there. On board there with Lando Norris, though, through turn 4. And, well, getting a nice tow from the Hulkenberg Haas in front of him, but then that becomes a little bit more of a pain when you come through this middle sector. But he's not pushing on a fast lap on these tyres. Again, gaining that data for a long run, but at the moment it's tight at the top with just 2.5 minutes left of running, 0.006 of a second between Leclerc and Sergio Perez. So it's nice to see him back up there with form. Hamilton down in 3rd, and Sainz and Piastri the top 5. Behrman still on the cusp of the top 10.
Okay,
Here
so
is Russell.
We'll box end of this lap. We have an issue with the car.
Wow.
That is not good news.
That's not going well, is it? They had an issue at the start of the session. They paused him in running time, and we don't obviously know if it's the same issue now, but this has not been a clean session for George Russell.
No, as the mechanics then will get to work. He was delayed getting out of the session anyway with a cautionary engine change to the Mercedes, and it was curious with them coming out of Monza as well, saying that it just seemed that their car, which seemed to be in good nick in qualifying, just seemed to get slower over the race. I think Russell was obviously a bit compromised, having had to bail out down at turn 1 and losing a bit of his front wing. But trialling the old floor, and we're seeing that more and more. I think, was it Monza as well, where Red Bull were going with the Franken floor concept. A lot of teams trying to find the key to improvement, and that, you know, with this ground effect era of car, it very much is, Ted, all about the floor and finding every single increment you can get. Ted, do we have a Ted? Maybe not.
Yeah,
we'll come back to it.
always
we do have a Ted.
I'm always here for you, son. Yeah, I mean, it is, but the floor, I don't think, is the problem. And the question I have is that after the Mercedes engineers and the oil technicians took that oil sample and saw particles in that oil sample from George's engine that they weren't happy with, and bits of metal, effectively, you've got to presume, is that engine, is that power unit going to be recoverable? Is it going to be something that actually they can find and replace? It tends not to be. Those kind of issues where bits of metal are turning up in oil samples tend not to fix themselves. So is then an engine penalty on George Russell's horizon somewhere in the next 8 races? We'll have to see. Just watching him in the garage at the moment, he seems satisfied enough, if you can say that. But I think the floor, going back to the floor, oh, team radio.
What is he doing?
Yeah, it's not clear to me.
Yeah, that was very close.
I think the floor is the least of Mercedes' problems. That floor is one that they've raced and won with, and it's one that they know. So I think that's going to be okay for them. But just finally, from down here, can I underline what a great session this is for that man, Sergio Checo Perez. Just whenever I passed him in the garage, he's just looked at ease in the car. His engineers going over things calmly. They added a gurney flap onto his rear wing. That seemed to be the extent of the setup changes that they were making. And he's just looked completely at home in this car. And what a great thing to see, a turnaround for Sergio Perez, just finally seeming happy with his car. I'm sure we'll interview him after the session, Harry, and he'll say, you know, we've got this problem, this problem, and this problem, but well, the times would certainly suggest that he's much happier than recent races.
Yeah, I actually caught up with one of his management team, actually, in the paddock earlier, who was saying that, you know, over the last few weeks and months, we've really been trying to work with Checo just to help his mindset and try and find himself a little bit more at ease. He's got the car problems. He's not able to drive around them as perhaps Verstappen might have been able to. He can't quite do it on Verstappen's level, but he's still right up there. But it's so crucial how a mindset can suddenly lose you time, and confidence is so important with every track, and if you just get yourself stuck in a rut, then you're constantly climbing uphill. So like they say at Red Bull, when they announced that he would be staying past the summer break, at least for a few more races yet, for some Perez strong tracks. Well, this is certainly one they were alluding to being the most successful around here statistically. 2 wins, sprint win as well, 5 podiums too. He goes well around here, and 0.06 of a second off Charles Leclerc as the checker flag is now out is a good, strong Friday from Sergio Perez.
Yeah, no, I think he'll be very pleased with that. I think, as we were saying, this weekend couldn't have come any sooner for him. If there's anyone who's a Baku specialist, apart from our own Craig Slater, who's been coming here well before the Baku Grand Prix, it is most definitely Sergio Perez.
Well, you learn something new about Craig Slater every day, don't you?
Oh, he's a big Baku fan. Although he's not here this year, which I'm very disappointed about. So, but yes, he is an absolute specialist. You should see the royal red carpet they wheel out when he comes into town.
Oh, I should have had a call with him before coming out here. Give me the tips of Baku. Checker flag is out then, and well, Alonso still out there, down in 12th though. So Aston Martin, well, his teammates up in 7th at the moment, taking the checkered flag, 6/10 off of Charles Leclerc's time. But we saw this at the end of FP1 too. Alonso very much pushing till the final point that he can, but gaining that data. Track evolution fairly high. It's been windy here as well all throughout the day. It is the city of wind in the land of fire for Azerbaijan and Baku, but they'll make their way back around and line up on the grid for some practice starts, try and lay down that bit of rubber. Pole position here on the right-hand side as you are looking at it now for a driver. It's a short run down to turn 1 as well. Only about, well, the run from turn 1 to the first braking zone, it's only about 90 meters. So for the likes of maybe Lando Norris and McLaren, who their starts have certainly been, I think, 50-50 at best to stay sometimes. You can't lose it, or the likelihood of you losing it all the way down into turn 1 is a little bit diminished. It is still a run down there, but then you've got the left-hander here, the 90-degree right-angle corner, before you then quickly into the braking zone for the next 90-degree left-hander. We've seen how much you can concertina up on the inside there for race day, with incidents very much happening. And unbelievably, we haven't had a safety car in the last 7 Grand Prix in Formula 1. We haven't had a virtual safety car since Austria, but here in Baku, well, the chances are a little bit higher. It's around about a 60% chance. At least all of the last 5 races in Baku have featured a safety car or a virtual safety car. So just something else to watch out for ahead.
So that was an excellent session in general, Ollie, and a really good long run. We learned a lot there.
Thank you. That was my first FP2.
Here I'm saying that you can meet the